we'll get started. Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Godfrey, and I'm the presiding chair of the Midwifery Joint Committee. This emergency called meeting of the Midwifery Joint Committee will now convene. This meeting is being held virtually via Microsoft Teams and is being recorded for record purposes. During discussion or to ask questions in this virtual meeting, committee members should identify themselves by name before addressing the matter. Moderator Abby Lefevre will now conduct an official roll call for declaration of a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Godfrey. All attendees on this call have been muted to allow the joint subcommittee members time to discuss the issues in the time allotted. Please respond present when your name is called. Dr. Amy Steele.
Present.
Dr. Alan Rosenbaum.
Present.
Dr. Carolyn Haraway-Smith.
Present.
Dr. LaDonna Thomas.
Present.
Meg Barrett.
Present.
Miguel Pinheiro. Miguel Pinheiro. Okay, we'll try to get him back on. Dr. Raquel Ingram.
Present.
Dr. Rao Patel.
Present.
Dr. Sharona Johnson.
Present.
Stephanie Godfrey.
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Godfrey, we have a quorum for this emergency called meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Lefevre. Committee members are reminded that they are to abide by the State Ethics Act and the Code of Conduct to both avoid conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict. Any committee member should identify yourself and the conflict or appearance of conflict and refrain from any undue participation in the particular matter. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order. Voting will be conducted by roll call. Following discussion, I will call for a motion and a second prior to a roll call vote of all committee members. When making a motion, the committee member shall state their name for record-keeping purposes. An official vote on the motion before the committee will take place by roll call at the conclusion of the discussion. Are there any questions regarding the review of Robert's Rules of Order? Great. The purpose of this emergency called meeting is to discuss the committee's response to the declared state of emergency and the governor's executive order 318. At this time, I would invite Meredith Paris, Chief Legal Officer of the Board of Nursing, to present.
Thank you, Ms. Godfrey. Members of the committee, thank you for joining us today. Under Executive Order 318, which was issued by the governor on October 5th, the governor ordered regulatory bodies to waive or modify legal and regulatory constraints preventing or impairing people who are not licensed to provide care in North Carolina to be licensed here or to become licensed here and provide health care, and also to remove those barriers for allowing those persons who are retired or inactive to provide care. Under the current law and rules of midwifery, and you've been provided a draft copy of what the ask for waivers would be at this point, is 90-178.3, the regulation of midwifery. As you all are intimately familiar with the law and regulations as they are currently, there is a restriction at this point that less experienced CNMs do have to have a collaborative provider agreement in order to practice and be approved to practice. And that is in, again, the statute 90-178.3. And then with respect to the rules, in 21 NCAC 330103 under eligibility and application, there also is the requirement in reference to practicing pursuant to collaborative provider. Based on the need of the community in Western North Carolina, the motion or the ask before the committee for discussion is to waive the requirement for a collaborating provider for those individuals practicing exclusively in the western part of the state and those named counties through the state of emergency, but no later than December 31st of 2024, unless this committee decides otherwise. Waiving the requirement of a collaborative provider only for those individuals practicing in this area would increase the workforce available to those communities and would also decrease the barriers in getting those who do not have a current approval to practice midwifery or who are inactive, but still maintain their national certification to be permitted to practice in that area of the state during this state of disaster. I certainly can answer any questions if there are any.
How do we keep, where do I raise my hand? I'm sorry. Let's see.
Go ahead, Dr. Haraway Smith.
I'm sorry. This is Dr. Haraway Smith. How do we keep providers who have had either behavioral or licensure issues from being able to practice? Translation, how do we keep unsafe providers from being added to this number?
If I may respond. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Haraway Smith. I think that is of utmost concern as well, as that's what we are here to do, is protect the public. And this does not waive any of those other requirements. They still have to come with an active unencumbered RN license. They still have to have no encumbrances on an approval to practice midwifery or any other occupational license. So this does not waive any of the additional requirements. It only applies to those individuals who don't currently hold an active approval to practice, who still maintain their certification. So the requirements for approval haven't changed, but for the group of CNMs who are required to have a supervising provider or collaborating provider, excuse me.
Thank you.
Dr. Rosenbaum?
I was reviewing the PDF document that was sent out, and the sections that list like a date for this temporary approval ending, like when it would expire, is blank. Is that something that we need to discuss and decide, or is that something that like automatically gets attached to whenever the end of the emergency like authorization or what's it called, the disaster ends, the declaration of state of emergency ends?
Ms. Paris?
Thank you, Ms. Godfrey. Dr. Rosenbaum, that would be a committee decision. I've seen it both ways. I can tell you that for RNs and LPNs, the Board of Nursing did put a date for some of these waivers of December 31st of 2024, unless it's modified in advance. We felt that that would be enough time to assess the need and get people in that area immediately without requiring additional or placing additional barriers to access, but not being so long that it might not be needed. But that certainly is a decision for the committee. The suggestion was for December 31st of 2024, and the committee certainly can meet and discuss whether it needs to be extended if they feel that's also appropriate.
I think that the December 31st, especially if that's what the NPs are also deciding to do, to keep it all the same for the state, is logical. That way, if it needs to be updated, it'll update across both boards.
Do we need a motion to make that edit, or is it just something that can be drafted and then voted on?
I think if you make the motion, I will tailor it as you make it.
All right, motion to take all the blank spaces where we're supposed to put a date. I think there's 2 spaces in the document, and put in December 31st, 2024 as the date of expiration of this waiver.
Dr. Rosenbaum has made a
Hello?
motion.
No, I don't know why. She's really good, isn't she?
It looks as though Stephanie Godfrey is trying to get back in the call.
Sounds as if Melinda Sink might be unmuted as well.
Yes, Melinda's been muted. I'm having trouble.
Dr. Thomas,
Present.
Meg Barrett,
Present.
Miguel Pinheiro. I'm not sure that he ever came on. Doesn't look like he's here. Dr. Ingram, Dr. Patel, Dr. Johnson, and me. I'm present. I don't know how many we need for a quorum.
We need 6 members for a quorum.
It looks
I think we have 4.
It looks as though, Ms. Godfrey, that several other members are getting admitted as we're talking.
Give everybody a couple minutes to get back. Looks like we have 6 now. Do you want me to wait a little bit longer?
I can see that Dr. Ingram and Dr. Raul Patel were trying to get on.
This is Dr. Patel. I'm here. I just keep, for some reason, getting kicked out, and so I'm having to rejoin. But if it happens again, I'll try my phone. Thank you. I'm sorry about that.
You're not the only one, Dr. Patel. Thank you. I would suggest doing another roll call since we have had this blip.
All right. Dr. Steele.
Hey, still here.
Still here. Yep. Dr. Rosenbaum.
Present.
Dr. Haraway Smith. Dr. Thomas.
Present.
Meg Barrett.
Present.
Dr. Ingram. Dr. Patel.
Present.
Dr. Johnson.
Present.
And Stephanie Godfrey present. We have a
So
quorum.
Dr. Ingram is here, but she can hear everything, but it doesn't look like she can see anyone.
Okay.
Even without Dr. Ingram, Ms. Godfrey, we do have 7 members present and can declare a quorum.
Okay.
Before-
So, go ahead.
Before we got cut off from the call, Dr. Rosenbaum had made a motion to amend what's before you to include the date of December 31st of 2024. But there had not been
Dr. Haraway Smith declined the new meeting link, so I don't think she's going to be able to join.
Okay.
All right, we ready for a roll call?
I believe so.
All right, Dr. Steele,
Present.
Dr. Rosenbaum is, I think, not coming back. Dr. Haraway Smith is not coming back. Dr. Thomas,
Present.
Meg Barrett,
Present.
Dr. Ingram,
Present.
Dr. Patel,
Present.
Dr. Johnson, Stephanie Godfrey present. 6, so we have 6, we have a quorum. So to return to the discussion, Meg, I think your hand was up when Dr. Rosenbaum had initially called for or made the motion. Did you have something to add before we vote on the date, December 31st?
I have a question, but it does not impact the date.
Okay, so do I have a motion? I guess I need to have a new motion since Rosenbaum is not here. Do I have a motion to include 12/31/24 as the date for the waiver?
This is
I
Dr.
can make
Steele,
that
so
same
moved.
motion again.
Oh, Dr. Rosenbaum is back. So Dr. Rosenbaum has made the motion to include 12/31/24 as the date on our waiver. Do I have a second?
Second.
This is Lieutenant second.
Meg Barrett has seconded the motion. Now that we have a second, I'll call for a vote. When your name is called, please respond approve if you're in favor of the motion or opposed if you're not in favor of the motion. Dr. Steele,
Approved.
Dr. Rosenbaum,
Approve. Aye.
Dr. Thomas,
Approve.
Meg Barrett,
Approved.
Dr. Ingram,
Approve.
Dr. Patel,
Approve.
and Stephanie Godfrey, I approve. So now we'll resume the discussion, or if someone wants to make a motion to pass the recommendation as put forward by who put it forward by Meredith, that she reviewed, that we will waive the need for a supervising physician in this state of emergency only in the declared counties until 12/31/24.
I ask 2 questions. This is Meg Gareth. The first is, would the time spent providing care count towards the new graduates' 4,000 required hours? If they were practicing without a supervising provider, is my first question. And my second question is there a scenario we could imagine where someone was working in a county where they were required to have a supervising collaborating provider and also working, maybe volunteering on weekends or whatever, in a county where they were not required to have a collaborating provider, and how would we approach that?
Dr. Paris, yeah, Dr. Paris, yes, Meredith Paris. That's
Thank
all I
you.
know.
Getting all sorts of degrees today. Thank you, Ms. Barrett. I think it would be up for the committee to decide if it could count towards the hours of supervision. That's up to the committee. The second scenario that you described, where they currently are working under a collaborating provider and want to work in these counties without a collaborating provider, we would be looking at what care was provided and where it was provided. So if they were acting without a collaborative provider in, say, the eastern part of the state, they would be in violation because they have to have their collaborative provider there. But if they are in Asheville and practicing there and don't meet the hours for independent practice, then they would have this waiver in place such that they would not be required to have a collaborative provider.
And the collaborating provider that they had, as a follow-up question, in the eastern part of the state would not be in any way required to meet with them or do the things that we expect of a collaborating provider regarding
Not for their, I apologize for interrupting, not for their practice in these affected areas.
Okay.
As it's drafted. Certainly that's up for discussion.
I guess my opinion would be that it should count for hours if they're going to volunteer 3 months of their time and they're doing midwifery care. I think that that could be as part of their attestation that they've been practicing. Because I think the point of having, you know, the point of having that time limit for people or time requirement for people to become independent, I think they're getting the experience that they would need to address the first point. And I think as long as, yeah, as Meredith Paris has kind of outlined, as long as we know, I mean, I think as a board, part of our responsibility is disciplinary. And so when we're doing, as the person who's been looking at a lot of these cases, it is really clear the source of the complaint and the full investigation that happens for every complaint. So if a complaint is submitted to the Midwifery Joint Committee about unsafe care from a midwife, it is very clear where that care was being provided. So if that's in one of these rural places that's affected, you know, had the biggest impact from this natural disaster, I think that that is very easy to tell, as opposed to, you know, they were at UNC. And so I think from a disciplinary perspective, that line in the sand should be really easy to draw, whether the collaborative provider had a responsibility to the applicant.
Thanks.
Not knowing this information immediately offhand, would we need this provider to provide us any additional or specific information that normally would be done with their collaborating provider for us to have to attest to this time?
So I think that attestation for the independent practice is really kind of, and Meredith, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know that there is paperwork or documentation that the applicant submits. I guess they would have to prove their time, but they would have some sort of employment records, I would imagine.
If they're supposed to be provided upon request, but the attestation is there, similar to the attestation required under their regular applications. The bill from the Board of Nursing system would be to have them attest that if they are going to practice in these areas, they understand it is without a collaborating provider and any other conditions that you'd like known. But it is going to be very clear, you can only practice without a collaborating provider if you don't qualify for independent practice in these areas during this time period. So they will be notifying the board to keep track of who is practicing in that area without a collaborative provider. I hope that answered your question, Dr. Rosenbaum.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions or discussion prior to calling for a motion? Ms. Paris.
Thank you. I would suggest, Ms. Godfrey, because of this being a final decision of the committee, that you take the waivers individually by motion, if that is what is being considered by the committee.
Okay. I just need to pull the meeting packet back up. Do I need to call, just to be clear, are you asking, should we do a vote on every like 901.178.3 individually?
I think you could address the topic and then adopt if that is what the committee decides, then you could address each waiver individually. So address as on the whole, the motion to, or the recommendation to allow practice without a collaborating provider for those individuals with not the experiences required by statute.
Okay. So is there, I guess before I start calling for motions, does anyone else on the committee have any discussion points or questions? Okay, so is there a motion? Got a lot of screens I'm toggling now, sorry. Is there a motion to pass the emergency temporary approval to practice for the certified nurse midwife, for a certified nurse midwife with less than 24 months or 4,000 hours of practice without a collaborative provider agreement?
This is LaDonna, so moved.
Dr. Thomas has made the motion. Do I have a second?
Raquel Ingram, second.
Dr. Ingram has seconded the motion. Now that I have a second, I will call for a vote. When your name is called, please respond approve if you're in favor of the motion or opposed if you're not in favor of the motion. Dr. Steele,
Approved.
Dr. Rosenbaum,
Approved.
Dr. Thomas,
Approve.
Meg Barrett,
Approve.
Dr. Ingram,
Approve.
Dr. Patel,
Approve.
Stephanie Godfrey, approve. The motion passes. Is there a motion to, let's see, is there a motion to pass emergency temporary reinstatement of the certified nurse midwife approval to practice? Do I need to be more specific than that?
Just for clarification of the committee, the highlighted portions are what is being proposed to be waived, and then the waiver portion is what's bold and in italics underneath the rule. So that would be the motion that the committee needs to vote on.
Okay, so the motion that we need the motion I need motioned is the emergency temporary reinstatement of the certified nurse midwife approval to practice without the name, license number, telephone number, email address, and practice location of the collaborating provider.
Raquel Ingram, so moved. I'm sorry, Meredith.
My apologies. I think for efficiency purposes, Ms. Godfrey, you can ask if there's a motion to adopt the waiver as written and for the emergency temporary reinstatement.
For all of 21 NCAC 33.0103.
Raquel Ingram, motion to adopt the waiver as written.
Thank you. Dr. Ingram has made a motion. Do I have a second?
This is Ladonna, second.
Dr. Thomas has seconded the motion. Now that I have a second, I'll call for a vote. When your name is called, please respond approve if you're in favor of the motion or opposed if you're not in favor of the motion. Dr. Steele?
Approved.
Dr. Thomas?
Approve.
Dr. Rosenbaum?
Approve.
Meg Barrett?
Approve.
Dr. Ingram?
Approve.
Dr. Patel?
Approve.
And Stephanie Godfrey, approve. Sorry, Meredith, do I still have to do this last one, the emergency temporary waiver of fees?
Yes, because we would like for them to be able to come and work and not have the monetary restrictions be a barrier.
I don't know, the MJC really needs the money. Just kidding. Is there a motion to approve the emergency temporary waiver of fees as written in NCAC 33.0102?
Raquel Ingram.
There's still.
Sorry.
Dr.
Raquel
Ingram,
Ingram, second.
perfect. Now that I have a second, I will call for a vote. When your name is called, please respond approve if you're in favor or opposed if you're not in favor. Dr. Steele?
Approved.
Dr. Rosenbaum?
Approve.
Dr. Thomas?
Approve.
Meg Barrett?
Approve.
Dr. Ingram?
Approve.
Dr. Patel?
Approve.
And Stephanie Godfrey, approve. The motion passes. I think that is all of them. Can I have confirmation of that?
You're correct.
Perfect. In that case, the annual meeting of the Midwifery Joint Committee will take place on November 19th, 2024. This will now be a virtual meeting, hopefully at 2:30 on Microsoft Teams. Thank you for your attendance and participation at this emergency called meeting of the Midwifery Joint Committee. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Dr. Rosenbaum has made a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Meg Barrett, I'll second.
Second.
Thanks. Meg Barrett has seconded the motion. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you. This concludes today's called meeting of the Midwifery Joint Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you all.